Hasnain, we were just saying that we were just saying that you're meeting overran, man. What's going on?
Listen,
Okay.
some of us have to have a full-time job to make films on the side, bro. Unlike you sitting around doing nothing.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to 786 Boulevard. This is episode 21, Female Muslim Filmmakers and Hollywood.
Anything that has to do with Muslims is in the terrorist genre, and it's exhausting. So if we're able to get out of the terrorist genre, it would be really great. The next one is not dating the white guy and not taking off the scarf would be really great.
Iman Zawahry is a female Muslim filmmaker who is attempting to break down stereotypes using comedy. The student Emmy Award-winning filmmaker's films have been shown in 100 venues worldwide. She is also the recipient of the Princess Grace Award, which is dedicated to identifying and assisting emerging artists. She has also helped create the first ever American Muslim film grant that helps fund filmmakers who are presenting a positive narrative of Muslims in America, and is currently working on her film, American-ish, which follows 3 Pakistani Muslim women pursuing their dreams in Queens, New York. We'll be chatting to her about her journey into filmmaking, the place of Muslim women in Hollywood, what her tips are for up-and-coming filmmakers, and some tips for screenwriting. Hope you enjoy this episode, and thank you for joining us here at 786 Boulevard. Iman, assalamu alaikum. Thanks so much for joining me, Hasnain and Ali, on this episode. Really appreciate you joining us. It's so inspiring to have a Muslim filmmaker with us, and hopefully we'll get to discuss your journey and leave us with some inspiration, inshallah. So thanks so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hasnain's basically Hasnain's of the perspective that anyone.
Me and Hasnain are going to be competing the entire time.
Yeah, I feel like that's what's going to happen today.
Hasnain's of the perspective that whoever comes on our podcast, we're doing them a favor. He's got like a bit of an ego thing, so just kind
It's
of.
not an ego thing. See, when you reach a level in life, you pull people forward. You know what I mean? That's how it works.
We're here to learn from our guest wisdom, inshallah, and hopefully.
I'm definitely low on the totem pole, so thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I wanted to start with a bit of an icebreaker. I wanted to talk about Miss Marvel, and I think the reason I wanted to speak about it is because I'm pretty sure everyone here has been longing for Muslim representation, and now we have something quite tangible in the mainstream. Miss Marvel, of course, as we all know, is a huge deal for Muslim Americans because she's a Muslim superhero essentially, who isn't kind of reduced to her religiosity in terms of making it about terrorism and the like, which we're so used to, unfortunately, in Hollywood, and we're hopefully looking forward to her having her own series. So I wanted to ask you, Iman, just to start off with, what's your perspective on the series coming up? Do you have any concerns? Are you excited? What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, I'm super excited. I'm crazy excited about it. It is our first female representation, whether or not the age of the person or whatnot. She's, a young teenage girl, Pakistani in New Jersey. And moreover, what's more important about it, it was written by a Pakistani from New Jersey, right? And that's really where it pulls through, because we have all this representation, quote unquote, representation of Muslims, and particularly Muslim women, but they're written by usually white males. And so the fact that we are owning our own story and in such a large superhero studio driven network and film, it's extremely exciting. And they put out the cast and stuff, and the cast as well has been all represented really well. Azhar Hosman, who I wrote my first feature film with, I was really excited to see that he was a part of it as well. There's so many different people that have been coming up for such a long time that are getting their chances to be on it. And I'm really excited to see, what comes with it. I saw a few stills from it.
Nice.
And I'm always super skeptical about stills and stuff, because I'm like, okay, wait, what is the costume design right? Is the production design right? But yeah, no, I'm really excited. It was funny because my colleague who's a white male, who's like, guess what, Iman? There's a character in Mrs. Marvel named Iman. So you're good luck having to tell everybody how to say your name correctly, because I always say my name is Iman, not Iman. And it ended up being that Iman Vellani is the character's name. I mean, the actress's name, not a character's name.
Right.
But yes.
And apologies for calling you Iman and not Iman.
Oh, no, it's fine.
That's just my accent. That's my accent.
I know it's a Desi Arab thing, but yes.
It's a British thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's a Nuri thing, actually, more than anything else.
I think, I feel like, personally, like I do have high hopes in Marvel. I think because we've seen an example already in Black Panther, where they kind of gave that story and that character to the African American community and let them kind of not only run with it, but really embrace it and create something iconic for the African American community. So I do have high hopes in it. We can't, however, forget that, unfortunately, Marvel, Iron Man started with Islamophobia. The first 10, 20 minutes of the very first film, the MCU, did kind of, even though they weren't Islamic terrorists per se, it did kind of deal with those kind of tropes. So, Hasnain, how far do you think we've come since then? Do you think things are changing, or do you think things are going to be the same from here? And are you excited about Miss Marvel? Do you even care?
I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. Of course I do care. What are you talking about, man? Of course I care. And we have come a long way, in my opinion. There's been a lot of push from Muslim males, and now we're finally seeing a push from Muslim females. So then collectively, we're going to see a push from both sides, right? So I think we are headed in the right direction. This is just this is a massive win. It lays the foundation for filmmakers like us, including Nuri, who's a phenomenal writer.
Thanks.
To push forward and to have a foundation to start off with, because right now my perspective from being in New York, it's kind of like the wild west. Everybody's on their own, doing their own thing, no collaboration. Everybody's just out for their own dog eat dog world. And I think now you're seeing more of a community around it. So once there's a community built, you move forward, and it'll be good. My short film was in the Muslim International Film Festival in Toronto, and the community there, the Muslim filmmaker community there, it blew me away, because we don't have something like that here. So we are definitely heading in the right direction.
Ali, what's your perspective on Miss Marvel?
I saw something a short time ago in Pakistan. Actually, they started a series with the woman lead. I think it's a cartoon series, and I think she wears burqa and niqab or whatever. I'm not sure exactly, but when I saw that, I was really surprised. I was like, oh, okay, they're actually making a huge change in Pakistan, in that sense. And then when I found out about Miss Marvel here, I was like, wow, we're gonna get probably ahead of Pakistan in that sense, where we are, we're already getting to where we need to be, or the direction we need to be headed. So I'm excited. I want to watch it. Plus, I like Marvel movies in general. So I'm excited.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to us. Please remember to subscribe to us on every platform: YouTube, Anchor, Apple Podcast, and whatever other one that we're on. We're on so many, but please subscribe to us. Really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conversation.
Do you guys? I'll throw this out to Iman. Do you think it's just a cash grab, or do you think that Marvel are really deeply concerned about Muslim narratives in film? I'm sorry, it's a strong question.
No, it's interesting, because at the end of the day, of course, that's all Hollywood cares about is cash grab, for sure. So, I think that they are trying to tell a story of a Muslim, because the Muslims are the bad guys. And I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of this, but like in 2016, when President Trump was elected, the executives got together. It was in the New York Times. They're like, okay, because of this Muslim ban and all this negative talk, we're gonna have to start creating narratives about Muslims. And
oh wow, I didn't hear about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's why since 2016, there's been hijabis everywhere, wearing it crazy, all these things. It's because they made that decision to make that push. So kind of the cool people on the block right now, for telling Muslim stories. One thing that I will say about Mrs. Marvel that I was slightly disappointed in, but I guess beggars can't be choosers, is all the directors. None of them were Muslim females, and the females on there, they're oh, actually that's not true. The one Muslim female there's a Pakistani, she's a Pakistani documentary director.
Okay.
The one that won the Oscar. I'm blanking on her name, but she's doing it, but she's also a documentarian, and she's doing it instead of like, there's so many Muslim female filmmakers that could be doing that. And of course, those those two male Moroccan guys that did Bad Boys.
Right.
So, just wish to pull more opportunities for Muslim women. It was interesting because, I run and I created the first American Muslim film grant. And we were in our 7th year. Oh, Justin was our first, you guys just had Justin on. He was our first film grant director. So someone had emailed me asking me, hey man, who are American Muslim feature directors that have directed a feature film? And he sent me some names and I was like, oh my gosh. And some of them were off and some of them are on. And there's only 7. There's only 7
Wow.
female American Muslim female women
Wow.
twice that have shot at least one feature.
Okay.
So that's kind of crazy.
What I wanted to ask you was, what actually got you into wanting to be a filmmaker? Was there a particular moment, or was it something that you wanted to do growing up? Like, what actually got you into doing this?
So you want the long story? You want the short story?
The long story. We're here for
Yeah.
it. Go for
We
it.
got time.
Bismillah.
So, when I was younger, I grew up in a small city called Panama City, Florida. It's like, they call it Redneck Riviera. It's basically Alabama. And, our parents were the physicians of the town, and we were the daughters of doctors, but we dealt with a lot of like racism, and there was not much to do in Panama City. It's just watching movies. So what me and my 5 friends would do was just watch movies and create skits. So we'd always create skits and create movies. I was like, we did the Arsenio Hall show, if you guys are old enough to know that. And I was Iman Hall, and we had like commercial breaks with things, everything like that. So I was a storyteller, but I was born and bred, like probably most of the brown people here and everywhere, to be a doctor. So I, kind of just followed that path. And when I went to undergrad, I was very much about like, okay, I'm going to do it. My other friends got shipped off to go to Egypt to be doctors straight away. And I begged my dad, I was like, listen, I'll be a doctor here. I'm just going to stay here. And of course, the first year I didn't do that. And like, I changed my major 5 times. I majored in religion, New York and languages, cultures, and I was going to be, I became a Muslim activist. I was president of my MSA during September 11th. I wanted to educate everybody about Muslims. And then I realized that I'm not really going to be educating the masses. I'm just going to be educating the people that want to be educated. And I heard about FSU Film School, which is one of the top film schools in the nation. And an Arab Muslim was there, male. And he was like, I was like, why are you going to this school? And he's like, oh, it's one of the best. And I was like, wow, he can do that. And so then I was like, you know what? I am going to, it's just not in our DNA to be artists, and to be storytellers. And so my husband ended up going to law school at FSU, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply to film school. I'm not going to tell my family. And that's what I did. I applied and I got in, and that's kind of where my journey started.
How was that conversation with your parents? Like, how long did it take for your parents to get over and talk to you again?
So it's really funny because I'll never forget the day. It's so vivid to me. A friend of mine went with me to the interview. We did the whole thing behind my mom's back, and then when I got the call that I got in, we went to this restaurant called O'Charlie's. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's a bad chain restaurant. And we were sitting there at lunch, and I had my friend with me and her whole family, and she's like hitting me to tell him. And I was like, hey, Mom. I was like really scared to tell her. And I was like, I'm going to go to film school. And she was like, alhamdulillah. She just got annoyed. Okay. And I was like, oh yeah, but it's one of the best. And she's like, she just kept saying, we're Egyptian, so she kept saying, khalas, it's fine, alhamdulillah. My dad was just like, whatever you want to do, man, with your studies, it's fine. But the whole time, even though I was one of the first and few, and I was getting an Emmy, and I was going to NBC, I was going to LA, and I took my mom with me. I was still getting asked when I was going to take my MCAT and my LSAT the whole time. So even when I graduated film school, my mom, they still kept asking me over and over, like, okay, you did this, man. Can you get back to serious time? And it wasn't until I got the job at the University of Florida, I'm a professor of film, that they're like, oh, okay, you can do this now. It wasn't any of the I'm making change. When you're, I know this with a lot of people that are quote unquote activists or trying to make change, or, we're always trying to build ourselves up and be like, we're pioneers, all this, your family doesn't really care about that. And I understand now as being, a mother, is that, you want your child to have stability and happiness. And so I'm an artist and there was no stability there. Just like Hasnain, he just came from another job, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, 76 Boulevard needs stability, so I'm here.
Hasnain's our money guy.
But no, go ahead.
I think one thing that kind of stood out to me about you know, what you said, even though you kind of said it in jest, was, you know, when you noticed that there was a fellow Arab in film school, you're like, oh wow, can we do that? And I remember that kind of reminds me of a conversation we were having last episode, which was, and I've mentioned this a few times in the podcast, but the kind of moment that hit me was when I saw Riz Ahmed get cast in Star Wars, and I saw the cast photo of the cast of Rogue One, and Riz Ahmed was standing with them, and I was like, oh wow, are we allowed to be in Star Wars? Can we, you know, as Pakistani American Muslims, you know, is that a place for us? And it's funny because like you kind of systematized your whole life to make you believe that you don't belong in these places. You don't belong in film. You don't belong on screen. You don't belong in film university. So like, how did that impact you? Was it like a big deal? I mean, for me, for example, it was very subconscious until it kind of hit me that we Muslims could be in the industry. How did that impact you before you got into film? And do you think that's something that's changing today in Hollywood?
In terms of representation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been the type to just kind of do what I want to do and kind of forge my own way. So I didn't really like look back. I didn't have a mentor, and that's why mentorship is so important to me now, and to mentor others. So I knew that this wasn't a story being told, but I didn't even think about it as, you know, audiences need this. It was more along the lines, and I think the younger generation, which I appreciate, Gen Z, is like, you know, forget you, this is who I am. But, you know, back in the mid 2000s, it was kind of like, you know, we're Muslims just like you. And that's all I really wanted to do, because I was just tired of having to deal, especially in the South. I mean, I'm a brown Muslim girl from the South, like dealing with the racism, like, hey, we're just like you type. And that's a story that I constantly wanted to tell. It's interesting that you're saying Riz Ahmed, because that was just like, what, 5 years ago? It was so recent. Yep. And my concept of it wasn't Muslims. It was representation was, I love 80s comedies, and I'm a comedic filmmaker, and I feel like comedy is the best way to educate others. And what I grew up on were 80s comedies. So all Tom Hanks 80s comedies were my jam, you know, like, and it's so funny because I'm like, representation is always these white male driven comedies that I'm like totally in love with. But Mira Nair is the one that showed me that brown woman could be on screen and brown women can make film. And that was Mississippi Masala in the early 90s. And so that was really kind of what showed me this is possible. Because it didn't matter, not, you know, to me, it's like they all lump us in one thing. We're all brown, no matter if we're Hindu or whatever. So I was really excited about that concept of having that type of representation. And that's what really kind of film for. I'm a huge Mira Nair fan. And I was really excited when I got Lilette Dubé, who's in my film, who's one of Mira's actresses, who's the most amazing actor ever, to be in the film as well.
I think what's so, sorry, Hassan, just before you get to your point, I think what's so interesting about what you were saying is that, you know, we've had many conversations about representation on this podcast, and usually it's like, hey, where is Muslim representation? Where is positive Muslim representation? But sometimes, you know, like you alluded to, your character can be represented on screen. You're an introvert. You connect to an introvert. You know, you have an interest in certain things. You connect to someone on screen like that, and I think that's that's definitely what connected me to film over the years. Is that I see people that, you know, are in many ways like me in character on film, and that's why I connect to them so much. But at the same time, it's always nice when that person's also a brown Pakistani Muslim, you know, and I really do hope that we move more toward that. Hasnain, sorry, I cut you off.
I forgot my train of thought, man.
Okay, Iman.
Just continue. I'll come to it.
Okay, Iman, if I can ask you a very standard question that you get asked all the time, but I am interested to hear your response. Were there any challenges that you faced as a Muslim woman in the film industry? If so, what were they, and how did you overcome them?
So, you know, to be honest, because there's no one else doing what I was doing, especially Muslim woman comedy, and I didn't get challenges. And I will say I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm not like out in LA doing all that stuff. Well, starting out in the beginning. So I didn't get challenges. It was always the opposite. Like, wow, you're making movies and they're funny. It was like, that was the whole thing. So I got really embraced by everyone. That's why, you know, my shorts in particular, they're not like, I mean, I did win an Emmy. They're not Oscar-winning type of shorts. They're just like family comedies. And it was, I was just so surprised how well it was taken. But because they haven't been seen. I remember at one film festival in Sarasota, which is predominantly older Jewish women, one of my shorts showed, and this woman stood up, started crying and clapping, and told the audience that I was the beacon of peace. You know, I was like, this is the most awkward thing in the world. But it's like, you know, we're getting somewhere, you know, we're able to kind of tell these stories. So it's not really, my challenges have not been in the fact that like I'm a Muslim woman. My challenges actually have been in the stories that I tell, which are comedies and which are comedies about Muslim women leads. That's really the challenges I've had, because especially navigating into the independent film industry and with my feature film as well, is usually these festivals want to see dramas about Muslim women, all very often, or just dramas in general. Like, I don't know if you know, an independent film, they're like really slow and they're really dramatic.
Depressing.
And I make it kind of accessible mainstream comedies in a way. And so that has been more of my challenge than just being Muslim. Actually, being Muslim has been the thing that opens most of the doors for me.
So, you mind if I ask you really quickly before Ali and Nuri take over my spotlight? Your short film Tough Crowd. I've seen it maybe like a few years ago, and I remember, and I actually just watched it last week just to refresh myself. It's a really funny short film. So, have you ever felt or like witnessed backlash because of it? I mean, like you were giving us an example of how a Jewish woman stood up and she was clapping and she was laughing, and I was laughing at the moment where it's like Rivka versus Jahab at the like when they battle each other out, and it was really funny. But then a question came to my mind. It's just like, you know, how, like, do you see backlash from your own people, or do you see backlash from like outsiders? Because as a filmmaker myself, my biggest backlash comes from like my own community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I haven't gotten backlash from either community. I mean, well, Muslims are biggest haters.
You can say it.
This is a safe place. Go for it.
It's a safe place.
No. I mean, people know that I'm constantly having to talk someone down at some point. You know, but in terms of my own films, because they're so G-ish, you know, like it's not an issue about that. I mean, I know in both of my short films, Tough Crowd and Undercover, I spoke about the Palestinian Jewish conflict, and but I mean, the one backlash I got from Tough Crowd, or from Undercover Tough Crowd, was my Jewish professor who was a producer, and he turned around, he's like, "Are you making fun of Jews?" And I'm like, "No, I am not." It's the complete opposite. I'm saying that, you know? And so, but otherwise, like, no, I haven't had much backlash. I mean, the only backlash, again, now, like making my feature film, is just like getting it out there, having Muslim women leads, and then like if there's anything that could be portrayed as negative, you know, the first thing that's when I was a filmmaker, and actually till this day, people assume like, "Oh, you're a documentary filmmaker." I'm like, "No, bees, I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I make narrative comedies." And so it's always assuming, because I have an activisty role, or I'm like a woman, or I'm a filmmaker in general, they always assume that you make documentaries. And then if you're not making these documentaries, you know, what are you portraying about Muslims? And so very outspoken. They all know how I am. So I'm just like, this is what I do. This is the kind of stories I tell. And if it's not your cup of tea, I'm so sorry.
We're talking about the backlashes and all these other different challenges that you're saying you're not really having many challenges. People are like, "Hey, are you really actually doing this?" But do you think you feel anything as a backlash, or even as a challenge as far as wearing a hijab and being a filmmaker?
No. Not at all. I mean, just wearing hijab in general is just a challenge.
Right.
Being a filmmaker, no, again, because it was just like me and Lena Khan that were the only Muslim hijabi filmmakers, the first ones ever in America, right?
Wow.
And so it's like, it's become a thing like, oh yeah, you know, you can do this. You're one of them. I know Lena has this story about how she would walk into an exec's office and they were shocked that she spoke English. Wow. I thankfully haven't had that experience.
That happened to me.
Oh, I'm
In elementary school, I knew perfect English, but they were like, all right, he doesn't go to ESL class. We're gonna put him over there.
Oh.
So I passed with flying colors because it was so easy. I don't really care.
Oh my God! They still made you take it.
Yeah, it made me take it. I was like, whatever.
Mo Amr has a story all about his ESL class.
Can we just take a moment and speak about your short film Undercover? I really enjoyed it. Really liked watching that as well. So like, you know, being the first hijabi filmmaker, and again, from a male's perspective, I can't relate or I can't really comment on it, but I just really want your perspective because you made a comment earlier about how after 2016, the hijab has been shown more in Hollywood, right? And what I've been seeing from my perspective, and again, I want to just repeat, I'm a male, I can't relate, but I want your perspective. Taking it off is like liberation for a lot of these characters, right? That's what we're seeing. Whereas in Undercover, you see this hijabi police officer who wants to get to the next level of her career. She clearly states in the film that her hijab and these badges, that's how she wants to prove herself. So it's basically empowering and doing the opposite of Hollywood. You know, what's your perspective on hijab being used as like liberation, as like empowerment in Hollywood, and like what do you want to see from that? Because it's a very sensitive topic, and I just wanted your perspective on it.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. I mean, it's literally the most annoying thing ever.
It is.
In any movie,
I think so.
In any movie that a woman has to take off their scarf in order to be liberated. It's so frustrating to me. And that's why it was such a big deal for me to show these characters. In all of my films, there's a Muslim woman with a scarf that's independent, that has that you know, is happy, that wants what she wants in her life, and that's her liberation. Like, she doesn't need to have a white man or her scarf off to be liberated, which is what Hollywood has done for us all the time. And I know, right. And I haven't seen it yet, but I know there's a Hala was one that people were talking about as well. Even in my film Americanish, there's a situation like that as well, but it's not the same. So it's like, you know, it always has to come down to, and they put so much, everybody does, as I'm sure you guys know, but you're not women, everybody puts so much damn emphasis on the hijab, you know, like it's not that important. You know? Just like, let's move on, you know, I get it, but let's move on and normalize it. And that's what's been happening since 2016. It's been completely normalized.
Yeah.
And like, I'm seeing, again, these Generation Zers, I'm like, where have you been all my life? Like all of these memes showing a woman in a short skirt and a woman with hijab saying both liberated women. I'm like, wow. I mean, it took forever for us to, you know, to see that, but it's crazy.
I feel like you like. So sorry, Ali, I'm gonna keep cutting you off.
No, I was just gonna say that she just mentioned Americanish, and I was gonna ask her to elaborate a little bit more on it and tell us, you know, what's about and what made you decide to make it.
For sure. But before we get into that, so I just want to check, because I feel like the reason I want to check, because I feel like that in itself is a big part of the conversation. You mentioned Hala, and I feel like right now we're in what I would call a first wave of Muslim representation in film. And I feel like one of the kind of issues I have with the Muslim stories that are being told in film, with the disclaimer that I understand that these are not my stories, they are the stories of whoever's making them. So it's Rami's story, it's Kumail Nanjiani's story, it's Aziz Ansari's story. Fine, I get it. But I feel like all of these films are about Muslims who are struggling to balance their faith with their American identity. I feel like it's a consistent struggle. And I feel like in reality, while we all struggle with our faith on multiple levels, I feel like that's the only Muslim story that exists now in film. Do you feel like there's not enough representation of, dare I use the word, practicing Muslims in Hollywood? And what would you like to see of Muslim representation in future? How do you want to see it grow and evolve from that context?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that's so important and true that you're saying the disclaimer of that's that person's story. That's why I do appreciate like Rami. He's like, this is my story. We are not a monolith. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, even though it is your story, Rami, you unfortunately have to be representing the rest of the Muslims because that's how they're seeing it at this point. Yeah. But it's like, we need more of those stories. So, you know, it's interesting because, I teach this in school as well, is that the civil rights movement with films like Watchmen, or shows like Watchmen, Lovecraft Country, and blanking on what the other one is. There's 3. And when I watched those movies and I saw these shows, and I saw how they're talking about just sci-fi and superhero-ness in the backdrop of the civil rights movement, that shows so much progression, and it shows so much education. And that's what we've been doing with the Holocaust, right? From the previous times. But we're 2020. And we're in 2020, 2021, and we're now only seeing our own history, the American history of the civil rights movement now being represented. And so the representation that we are going to get as Muslims is snail slow on the Blacks of the Black community, because they're always the ones going first, and we're always having to stand on their shoulders. And very grateful, of course, for that, and that's what like allows us to get Mrs. Marvel. So that kind of answers your own question. Like, Mrs. Marvel's already doing that. It's a superhero story. And I think that in general, children of immigrants, and because we are a young generation, like, I don't know if your parents if you're all first generations, but I know a lot of us are, we're telling that identity story, that conflict of civilizations, because that is our journey. Identity is a big part of my stories as well. Like, it's a big thing that's kind of going through. And I feel the only way we're going to get past that is by having other generations kind of telling these other stories.
Yep, like 008.
008.
Never gonna let that go, man.
Give it the
never
picture,
gonna let that go.
That was the first episode, right?
That's been the
first
first, second, third, fourth, fifth. He always mentions 008 because he wants the
I
role
want
so
a
badly.
brown 008. I want to be a secret agent. Okay, I want to drive
So
an Aston Martin.
you want to be a womanizer who pushes forward imperialism.
Why not?
That's what you're gonna be.
So what? So what?
But I didn't answer your practicing Muslim question. That's another thing that is actually a challenge. And I was just talking to my producer about this, is that Hollywood doesn't want just us, which is literally the box average Muslim. They want us plus something. So plus some or other hyphenation. And it's like we skipped over the just American Muslim, and we went to hyphenated others, right? And I mean, there's nothing, of course, there's nothing wrong. I'm really happy that we're telling other stories, but it's like, can we go back down to to the majority stories as well? And can we tell those stories too? But I always try to like step back in any scenario that I'm in, and particularly like even with the situation with Hallam and Hell, like I was really disappointed in the way that the Muslim community, but I wasn't surprised, started attacking, like literally attacking. And it's just not, I'm completely against it. I support the filmmaker as much as possible. If that's a story that she chose to tell, that's a story she chose to tell, and it was told by a Muslim woman, and that's something that we should be amplifying.
Sorry, this is Harley you're speaking about, right?
No, I'm talking about our own community.
Oh, my sorry. Okay.
Yeah, because again, I'm terrible because I should have watched it by now, but I haven't watched it. But that was like the one thing that everybody was like going against. It's like they're just talking so poorly about the film as Muslims, and I feel terrible for Minhal because she created a story about her community that she decided to tell, and it could have the tropes that we are talking about now, but she should have our support because she's a Muslim filmmaker in the industry. And that's the story that she chose to tell. So I'm a big proponent of telling that.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen the first half of it. I didn't manage to finish it. I should. I feel like because I feel like the context is very important because our representation of Muslims has been just so horrible over the past 100 years, right? It's just been so absolutely diabolical. There's not really any other word for it. I feel like because of that, whenever something does come out, it does come under more scrutiny. I do agree with you that we should definitely support Muslim filmmakers and definitely shouldn't be so harsh. And I think right now when we're in this Twitter culture of calling out and cancelling, it's so easy for the most random people to kind of have a voice on these matters. But at the same time, and we can't ignore the fact that everything that Muslim filmmakers do is really amplified. We're having this conversation on one of the other episodes with the cast of Mosul, a film on Netflix about the Iraq war against ISIS. And the point I was making to them is that because Muslim representation is so, so minuscule, whenever you see a scene that kind of you kind of take the worst of it and interpret it in the worst way, and unfortunately that is kind of like how we've been programmed. So how would you say that we should, I mean, I know you kind of alluded to this already, how would you say that we should kind of change our perspective on Muslim film, on films that speak about the Muslim story going forward?
Great question.
I'm full of them.
I mean, just for myself in general, just, appreciating that filmmaker was able to make a film with support with Muslim characters is a really strong thing, and not be in what is called our genre, which is the terrorist genre. Anything that has to do with Muslims is in the terrorist genre, and it's exhausting. So if we're able to get out of the terrorist genre, it would be really great. The next one is not dating the white guy and not taking off the scarf would be really great as well. But like the Big Sick is one that just kills me, right? But like, again, I mean, that's Kamal Nanji, like he is.
Right, that's his story.
That's his story. I can't hate on his story, but it's like, it falls under that same box. One thing that killed me in the Big Sick, and I mean, I love Kamal, I don't know him personally, but if I met him, I'd tell him how much I appreciate him. But he made a comment that goes against everything my essence is, where he tells his parents, have you seen the movie?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember the moment when he tells his parents, he's like, you want me to be American, but you don't want me to live the American lifestyle. And I'm like, what the, like, it's again, he just shoves us as the Muslim brown, you have to be in this box of traditional, and American is marrying the white girl, drinking, like premarital sex, all that stuff. It's like, it just killed the whole entire movie and the whole point of the film. Then it just like broke my heart. That was my before I let Ali finally get to his question. That was my biggest problem with the movie, was that he didn't seem to separate religion and culture. There's another line which kind of hurt me even more in the film, which is where he said, "I'm battling a 1400-year-old culture."
Yeah.
He literally said, so that makes it clear that it's not just about his Pakistani identity. That makes it clear that his issue is, or at least based on the script, is kind of like with the religion itself. And it's like you said, the Muslim, and there's a similar episode again in Aziz Ansari's show about religion, which kind of, goes along the same vibes. And I feel like we can tell stories of Muslims who are struggling with their faith, but we just need to do it in a very smart way. So, films like First Reformed, even series like Daredevil, they explore faith in very intelligent ways. They explore, Matt Murdock's relationship with his faith in a very deep way, where he still believes, but he's kind of like readjusting how he believes. And it's very philosophical and deep. And I feel like those are the stories that we need, because right now it's like, I'm Muslim, I pray 5 times a day, but my friends Josh and Dan are drinking, and I want to be with you. The storytelling is way too simple.
Agreed. It has to be the levels for sure.
Ali, please go ahead.
I forgot my question. Oh yeah, Americanish. Tell us about yes.
So Americanish is a labor of love. I've been working on it for 8 years of my life, and the way it started off is another person that you should have on the show is Aiza Fatima. She created a one-woman show. It's the first Muslim female one-woman show in America called Dirty Packy Lingerie. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a fantastic show, and it's 6 different Pakistani Muslim women, and they change. She does them from the age of 9 to 54, and she changes with a scarf, right? And it's a one-woman show that just talks about being a Muslim woman. It has a, she does it on purpose. It has a risque title, but there's nothing risque about it at all. But so when I was in New York City for my birthday and I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is on. Let me see it. So I walked in, I laughed, I cried, I screamed. I was so completely taken by the show. And so I spoke to Aiza afterwards, like, hey, have you ever thought about making a movie or shorts about this? And she's like, yeah, definitely. And from that day, we just hit it off. And we started working on that script that month. And then 4 years later, we continued working on the script. One of the hardest things that I've ever done, because it's a multi-story structure. Never write your first feature film on multi-story structure. And it's been such a challenge and growth. I mean, we're talking about my shorts, which I made like 10, 12, 13 years ago. They're like so like a different time for me. And this film has been such growth. And I was able to navigate at the same time. So we wrote the script. It amended multiple times because of the Trump presidency. It's really about, you know, 3 Pakistani Muslim women living their life, love, and career in New York City under Trump's America. So we have 3 different Muslim women that are not considered, you know, a monolith. And it's similar to My Big Fat Greek Wedding and Love Actually. So it's kind of like this rom-com type of film.
Nice.
But anyways, I said, I'm going to go out to the Muslims to raise this money. And it was like the biggest mistake of my life. Yeah. Because they were just like, first of all, making a documentary, like, what are you making a documentary about Hajj? You know, like all of this stuff. I traveled the world trying to, not the world, the nation, to reaching out to the rich Muslim people to help raise money for this film. And at the end of the day, it ended up being my friends and family who are donated and invested in the film. And that's how we were able to make it through. And so, you know, after that, it's been, you know, we shot in New York City. New York is a very hard place to shoot.
Shot in Queens, New York, may I say? Queens, New York.
Jackson Heights, Queens. Yeah. So it was a really, you know, really great experience. And then finally, we shot it, we edited it, shot again, we edited it again, and then we edited it again. And then finally it's done. And I'm ready for it to be done. But yes.
When can we see it, and where can we see it?
That's a great question. It's in 2021. Hopefully, you know, we've sent it out to all the festivals. You know, talking to Netflix, doing the whole thing. Inshallah, yeah. Make all your du'as possible. You know, just kind of wanting to get it out there. But I was like, 2020, we were questioning it. We're like putting out feelers to the industry, and then now I'm just like, 2021 has to be the time.
How difficult and complex is the marketing process? Because I feel like when aspiring filmmakers want to make films, you know, they're so hungry to get on the camera and shoot the frame and shoot the right shot and even edit it, but like we kind of like space out from the fact that, you know, sometimes marketing processes like yours take 1 or 2 years just trying to sell the film, right? So how complex is that process, and what advice would you give to people who were thinking about making a film on their own?
So, you know, it's really interesting because I have a specific producer that, I mean, the way that it is and the way that we're always taught in film school is that you make a feature and it shows at a top tier festival. And at that top tier festival, you get distribution, and then you get distribution to theaters, and then you go to streaming. That's the plan. But the fact of the matter is top tier festivals don't usually want films, all films, obviously. It's like 1% chance to get in top tier festival, and they don't want specific type of films, right? You know, and they might not support other types of films, you know, so that's a bit more of a challenge. So I actually think, you know, we're doing the plan, like everybody has their own strategy. I'm seeing a lot of filmmakers that go straight to, especially during COVID, had to go straight to streaming or straight to Amazon, which is really great as well. But, you know, our plan is to still do the premiere at a festival, pick up distribution, and then go to streaming. And that's kind of the biggest goal. But what I do always want to impart, but I have my producer that's really a big about this, is you should never have a festival or person define, you know, your voice or your story or your worth, which is a lot of what happens with us. And that's not, you know, necessary, especially because of all social media and all the streaming platforms that we have and the audiences. Like, it's just like a huge need for us to tell stories and to support those stories.
Very inspiring. Hasnain, sorry, you had a point.
I forgot, man.
I
was just so zoned into what she was saying, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm like, what the hell did I say?
How bad was that meeting? I feel like you just look scarred from that meeting that you had before the podcast.
Yeah, you did come on with a little bit of a low energy today.
Listen, okay,
what happened?
I noticed that too. I don't know you.
Sorry.
There you go, Hasnain. There you go.
Listen. You know, sometimes when you're at top, they just want to bring you down. That's what I'm trying to say.
Iman,
I did have a question. I did want to take it back a few steps to the beginning process of not just your feature film, because I will be honest with you, very few people know this about me, but I did attempt to do a feature on my own about 2 or 3 years ago. I unfortunately gave up on it, and I kind of let it go because I felt that for where I am in my stage right now, I want to focus more on short films, and I want to focus more on web series. Because what I'm trying to do, I feel like is more beneficial in that space, right? So if I'm good at that space, own it. But I'm not trying to push away the fact that I will do a feature in the future. Inshallah, I will. But I wanted to take it back to what I think is the hardest process of any filmmaker, and that comes down to writing with the script.
Oh my God.
I want to, because I need your advice on it, as many as others. Because I see myself zoning out. I see myself rewriting scripts 12, 15, 27 times. But like, what's your process of how you write? Like, do you collaborate? Is it you come up with the idea and then you work with your writers that you have available to you to collaborate with that? Like, where do you start? And then how does it progress from there?
That's a great question.
So sorry, man. Just to interject before you answer. I want to get that off the back of this as well. I need advice because Hasnain knows. the first time I met him, was it 2016? I met you, or 2017. I was like, hey, I'm working on the script, and it's been 2-3 years, and I'm still working on it. And my problem, genuinely, is that I feel like I'm good at critiquing film. So the problem is, like, one thing I can say that I feel like I'm good at is I can watch a film and say, hey, that was a great film, but I would have changed A, B, C, D, F, G, right? So because I know what a good film is, I find writing a film just absolutely the most immense thing you can do, because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I can't write this unless it's going to be good. And when to me, I don't feel like it's good enough, I just kind of like zone out and give up on it. So what advice would you give me as well?
Yeah, no, I mean, to both of you guys. So writing is the most challenging thing for me. I can't wait till one day someone just like, here you go, man, here's your script and you direct it. Like, that's my dream goal. But I know that I'm just trying to tell my own stories right now. And so I always, since film school, have worked with a collaborator. I don't write on my own, because I have my strengths and I have my weaknesses. And so writing with a collaborator is extremely important. But, I teach screenwriting. I work with a lot of writers, and I was just in this lab with the Brown Girls Doc Mafia too, with other writers, and we were just talking. And in general, what we need to do as writers, which is really difficult because we all want to be the best, is not judge our writing first, like not judge it at all. And that's really important. And the second thing that I always say, and people I don't know what your style and structure is, but I can tell you mine is structure. Structure is the most important thing that I have in writing. And so I need beats, since I know I'm directing it, there's always beats of action and beats of storytelling. And so beating it out, which I don't know, I go by Blake Snyder's book, Save the Cat, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but it has beats of action. And so I use those beats of action to kind of beat it out. It was interesting because in our first feature film, the first one I wrote with Mo Amer and Azhar Osman, it went through so many things because we were making all the same mistakes. We were just like not outlining, we were writing, we were just trying to put our stuff into it. It was a whole like mess. And then we tried to bring someone in and they wrote it in a different way. And it obviously was shelved. And then with Americanish, Liza and I, what we did is we wrote half of it and we brought it together. And then that was like not working out as well because we were both doing different things. And we ended up writing short films because there were 3, and then we tried to put them together and it didn't work as well. Then we went back to, but then in the process, which I think is really important, is like, you have to have people that you can reach out to read, because you guys get so blinded by what you're reading. And it doesn't have to be a filmmaker, by the way. It could be friends, like, have them read it and ask them questions about it. Tell me where it got boring. Tell me what your favorite character is. Tell me where the arcs happen, blah, blah. But with Americanish, what brought it back together is that we did use the structure of Say the Cat, and we were able to bring it together. And then we brought in my co-partner, and they kind of helped to bring it together. Now, my second feature film that I'm writing, which is about my childhood in Panama City, Florida, we all skipped school and went to MTV's The Grind, which was a spring break thing. So it's like a bunch of brown Muslim girls going to the MTV The Grind when we were fully clothed. It was like a whole thing. So this process actually was the most smooth process I've ever had in a writing experience. And what we did is we broke up this film into Act 1, and then Act 2, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, and then Act 3. And we had plot points on each one. and we created what the plot points would be for each part of those parts of the film. Then we started creating scenes for each, like, we're gonna go. It was a road trip movie, so they're like, okay, this is what's gonna happen. They're gonna go here, and then we pull from personal experiences that actually happened, and it was really hard for me to differentiate the personal experiences and the movie script, which my partner was really good at doing. And then and we had all of these. I had my writing partner, and then one of my students who was our writing PA came to my house here in Florida. We sat here for like 2 weeks, and it was like spread out all of my family room, where we just kind of like beat the script out and wrote it out. And so when we did the story and we did the scenes, the next thing, the most important part of the thing, I don't know why I feel like I'm doing some writer's workshop shit right now.
Please, we're loving it. I'm taking notes.
Oh, yeah, take notes.
The next thing that we did is we actually took every single one of the characters, because why did I do this again? I did another ensemble piece, and we put the emotional beats, which is the most important thing, because that's what drives you with the character, right? It's what keeps you with the character. We mapped out the emotional beats of each character in every part of the scene. And so after we did all of that, they left. And then we actually ended up splitting up. It was like, okay, you write these first 10 pages, I'll write these pages. And it was really great because my writing partner was like, don't judge him, just write the pages out. Don't even look back. Don't worry about grammar. That's another thing. Is like, you just write it, don't worry about grammar, just like put it all the way out. And then we put it together. And it was like, well, I was like, this is gonna be a complete shit show. It's like, we put it together and it was actually really great. I was really excited about it. And so we put it together, and then we smoothed it out to where it was like one writer throughout. So that was my best process ever. We're gonna work on the third feature soon too, but I had written that second feature because my friend works at Netflix, and she was like, we need a Muslim story. Can you write one for us? And I was like, yeah, for sure. But my mistake was, this was before Netflix got really big. And I was like, well, I'm working on Americanish right now. I'll do that later. Then Netflix blew up, and then like she's part of the big budget films. And so like, it's like Scorsese that she's working with constantly. Right. But so that's the point. The reason why I wrote that feature in the first place was to kind of send it out to Netflix and hope, with the goal, inshallah, making it with them.
Inshallah. So continuing on the conversation of screenwriting, and I'm sorry guys, but it's a filmmaker discussion right now. What advice do you have in regards to raising the stakes for the characters? Because I think that's something that I have a lot of issue with when I'm writing it. And you mentioned emotional beats, so I don't know what you mean by emotional beats is raising the stakes. But just any thought on that?
Yeah, just real quick, emotional beats is like in every part of the scene. So, in any scene, and then you guys should know this too, is like when you're writing a script, if it doesn't move the story forward, you need to throw that out. And so, and you map it out with the emotional beats is like, how is the character feeling at this moment, and how is it moving the story arc forward? So she's feeling dejected by what's happened with her family, or whatever, that there has to be some sort of emotional breakdown that we're kind of going through to gain us. We're working up to the arc of each character, the climax arc of each character. I forgot what your second question was. Sorry.
Raising the stakes.
Oh, raising the stakes, man. Stake raising. I do a whole lecture on this in my class. Stake raising is hard, and you know who does it the best? Pixar films. Pixar film does stake raising. It's like in Inside Out. You're just like, oh my god. Then she lost the game. Then she lost the island. They're on the other side of me. It's like constantly raising stakes.
Yeah.
And stake raising is actually really challenging. But I think that as long as you bring it back to something or some part of the emotional part of the character in the beginning of the story and how it can affect them later, that's how you can raise the stakes. Sometimes people feel like it has to be like some sort of like physical or external thing that's happening. But if, like, for example, your character has extreme OCD, and we know that they have extreme OCD, and they've been working on this one thing the entire time, and they kind of go through life, and then that same thing that traumatized them in the beginning is what they saw in the middle of it. That's like kind of the obvious thing to do. And then over that is in that their child has that same thing, but then they're a part of it too. Like, just taking it back to the essence of it and kind of bringing it up through that is kind of what I try to do in terms of raising the stakes. But that is a really challenging.
Yeah, it's something I'm challenging with as well. And Are you on? Would you consider teaching a class on masterclass? Because I'm currently taking the Aaron Sorkin masterclass on writing. But you know,
teach? Well, I appreciate you, Hasnain, but I'm no master.
no, I'm just saying.
I am
you know,
like a student at all times.
It's just you know, he recorded a 35-minute episode lecture on screenwriting.
Yes.
Really tells you. I don't know if you heard about it, but
Yeah, I have. I haven't seen it yet.
Alhamdulillah, upgrading my Verizon wireless, I get Hulu free, Masterclass free. I got them all free.
Whoa, need your login, bro. I would definitely say that's definitely left me inspired. Hasnain, 3 months, inshallah. Put this down. January 1st. Sorry, go ahead.
What did he say? Were you gonna tell me what he said about freezing steaks?
I didn't get to that part yet.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know. First of all, it's hard for me to sit here and listen to a lecture. I got work to do, man. I got rent to pay.
Yeah, no, you know what's so funny, because I heard that too. My friend bought me Masterclass for my birthday, but then I got it for $1 because I had a student email because I'm a professor, and I'm like, oh my god, I already bought it. But I heard that Mira Nair did a whole directing thing with her
she
actors.
did.
And I wanted to see that because I heard it was very different and unique than what you would usually originally think it is.
Wait, so you have it for $1 or you don't have it for $1?
I do have it for $1, but I also have it as a gift. I'm like, we should give this to somebody else. Like, just anybody want mention?
Yeah, so like I don't know, just thought, just giving some advice on stuff like that would be great, because some of us really need it, especially me, who is kind of like a one-man army when it comes to my films. From writing to producing to executive producing to acting in it, because that's my goal is just to act, but
to funding.
I have to funding.
I gotta tell you, man, you can't survive that way. Filmmaking is a collaborative process.
That's why I have Nuri.
You have to have your team. That's great. You have to have your team, and you have to. I mean, we usually shoot our films, like I could shoot a short film here, like with 15 people, and that's how like I teach the students. But it was crazy on my feature film. I was not used to that. It was like 50 people, 50 to 75 people on some days, and it was just like really big. But that's a part of the process, is being super. Yeah, you can't. That's one thing you can't do with film, in narrative film especially. You can't do it on your own.
I mean, for me, my biggest crew was probably 6 people, and we got it done. And it was my biggest accomplishment, because for me it landed at Soho International Film Festival. So I was like, that's a win for me.
Yeah.
Which Nuri still hasn't watched. No, it's just
Nuri, you're not a partner, Nuri. What is
yeah.
Okay, but guys, I'll say this after Iman's inspirational speech. I give myself 3 months before I send you a completed script, Hasnain. Okay, we should shake on it virtually. I'm full-time freelance from January 1st. I'll have more time, and I'll finally finish it and send it to you, and then we can review it together.
What's interesting, Hasnain? There's 2 things I want to talk about the you said 3 months, which is great, Nuri, but you have to write every day. Spike Lee writes every morning till this day, 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
But
I do. You're right.
In this writer circle this Brown Girls documentary, I was on with a TV writer, but she's a feature writer. She just did a feature with Ashanti, and she's like this big writer. Her name's Camille Brown, and she did this thing where you write a feature in 7 days, and what you do is you just write 10 pages every day, and you're not upset about what it is. You just write it. Now, of course, you need to do your outline and all that stuff beforehand.
Right.
But you just do it. And that's so true. You could write 10 pages a day. That's going to probably take you 2 hours to do. You could write 10 pages. It might be crap, but you got it out.
Freelancing is easy.
Yeah.
Freelancing. What do you do?
It is.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie to you. It is quite easy. But yeah, I'm motivated, man. I'm motivated. Let's do it. 7 days. I'm down. I'm gonna do this.
Do it.
Iman, thank you.
The thing is, though, is you just have to, and then after that, because to me, the biggest fear is the blank page. I don't know if that's what it is for you guys. But then after you have something there, you can just edit it to death, right?
Right.
And then the other thing has been really interesting is that I've been trying to build up my Instagram following, but since I have been with all my Instagram, I've had 10 people reach out to me that are like, hey, I need help with this, that are Muslim filmmakers. Right. And I'm always like, what is this legit? Is this person gonna kill me later on? I'm really scared about it. But I ended up making so many strong connections with these people, and then I'm actually meeting with them on Zoom during the pandemic and talking to them through it. And I think that's really important for you to, you of course you always have me, but to reach out to anybody, because they're there to help and assist you, but also build your team. It's really important.
Wonderful. My team is Allah. I don't need anybody else.
Oh God, you just turned into the That's great.
Just kind of
Ride
like,
your camel, sir.
just kind of
Yes.
like, just kind of like winding down. What advice would you give to any female Muslim filmmakers who are watching now, who might be watching in the future, who want to break into the industry? What advice would you leave them with?
I get this question on almost every single panel, and it's different every time. I'm like, what advice should I give to you guys this time? But I mean, just hone your craft and tell your story, period. And we're surrounded by naysayers, brown or not, but I know that we have a lot more built up against us. I literally had to fight against my family saying no to me the entire time. And I did it. I mean, I know that a lot of people couldn't, but you're going to have that come against you the entire time. But if you are good at what you do and you are passionate about what you do, and even though, I don't even know if you guys know this, like majority of the directors now, they're not good at what they do. They're just extremely hardworking and they're networked. And so you could not be good at what you do, but you can love what you're doing and you can be really hardworking. And that's a really good point of a filmmaker is be really strong, hard at what you're doing, hustle as much as you can. Don't worry about the naysayers, and your family will always come around, because I know that's one of the biggest things. Your family will eventually come around when they see your success, your joy of everything and everything else like that.
There you go. You have it there. Hasnain, you can do it now.
Hasnain.
My family doesn't even know what I do half the time. I'm good with that.
No, inshallah. Iman, really appreciate you taking for your time to chat with us. It's definitely very inspiring. Left us all inspired. Just kind of like finally, what are your upcoming projects? Anything, I know you mentioned a few. Where can we expect to see your name, inshallah, and what are you working on right now?
Yeah, so like I said before, I'm working on my second feature film about my childhood to just kind of push that out to see where we can make that. I'm also working, which I'm excited about, with a short animation that will definitely be coming out about a Palestinian children's book. So that's really exciting because I've never done an animation before, so that will be coming out soon. And just writing my third feature.
Wonderful. And where can people find you on Twitter, on Instagram?
Oh, Iman was my name. Iman Zawahry. I mean, no one knows my name. Iman Zawahry on Instagram, and then Iman KZ Film on Twitter, which I'm not really great on my Twitter game, but yes.
Wonderful.
On Instagram.
Wonderful. Will do. Iman, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
And that was a fruitful and inspiring discussion with Iman Zawahry on female Muslim filmmakers in Hollywood. Thank you so much, sister, for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with your friends, family, and on social media platforms. Give any of us a tag and we will, inshallah, repost it for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on all podcast platforms, as well as our YouTube page. We are releasing a new episode here every single week, every Sunday, inshallah. I hope you had a fruitful New Year's, and we pray for a blessed and blissful 2021 for all. Thank you once again for joining us here over at 786 Boulevard.